Hello, everyone. So today we are starting on our next unit looking at World War I. And specifically, because this is the first section of that unit, we're going to look at the causes of World War I. So a little bit of context to start us off. So last unit, when we were talking about African imperialism and Europe going to Africa, going to Asia, and taking over other lands, this was all taking place in the late 1800s for the most part. And so as we get into the 1900s, we're looking at a Europe that is extremely wealthy because of colonization, because of the Industrial Revolution, and because of the years of doing both of these things, and due to rising nationalism, in which people are becoming more and more and more loyal to their specific country and not just a region, or a town. We're starting to see a lot of competition that is brewing between these different European nations. And so this competition, there's going to be a little bit of tension that starts to rise because of the desire to be the strongest, the richest, the most powerful nations in the world. And you're going to start to see this animosity and distrust start to build in the late 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s. And so by the first decade of last century, we start to see that war is a possibility, even in the midst of all of this prosperity. And so in addition to the competition, because some of these countries are starting to realize that a war is probably inevitable, you start to also see alliances that start to form that are going to provide a sense of protection should a war begin. So to understand under this context why a war would start in 1914, you only need to remember one simple acronym, and that is MAIN. And MAIN stands for the four different main causes, see what I did there, of World War I. So M stands for militarism, A stands for the alliance system, I stands for the imperialism, and N stands for nationalism. So we're going to talk about all four of those in greater detail at this point. So militarism, so this is referencing the building up of large military forces for the purposes of war. And so this could include gathering more weapons, gathering more ammunition, gathering more ships, building up your armies with more and more people. And this really started to happen for a lot of different countries within Europe in the early 1900s. A lot of it, tied to, having enough forces to be able to protect their colonies around the world, but also because they, sensed that there was greater competition happening, a greater rising in tension, and this could spill over into war. And so as you see one country building up their military, you're going to see other countries that would then build up their militaries more so that they're not put at a disadvantage should war begin, and so that they have a greater sense of safety. And in terms of those countries that militarized the most, you start to see Germany and Britain especially grow both their armies and their navies. And for Germany, we didn't quite talk about this a lot in the last unit, but Germany was a relatively new country. There had always been Germanic peoples going back to the Roman times and before that. But in terms of one country that we know of today as Germany, that's only been around since the early 1870s. And so as Germany started to become a greater power due to their industrial might and their industrial power, you start to see that they want to build up their military in order to get in on the game of both imperialism and also of territory building. And so military leaders, because of this emphasis on militarism, military leaders start to gain greater power within societies in Germany and Russia, in the lead up to World War I, and this is going to cause a greater push for the sort of fighting that we're going to see in World War I. The second main cause, see what I did again, of World War I is the alliance system. So prior to and during the war, many countries ended up agreeing to complex sets of alliances. And you would think in your head, well, they're in alliances, like why would this cause a huge world war and fighting if they're all, sort of together and cooperating with each other? Well, what we're going to find out when we talk about, the spark that started it all was that as one country would enter the war, because there was this complex alliance system, you would have other countries that would then declare war on their alliance members' enemy. And so this gave the strong potential that a small conflict between a couple countries could grow into a larger conflict with many different countries that are opposed to each other. And so in the run-up to the war, we start to have two main alliances that end up forming. The first is the Triple Entente. So this is what, where the United States would join later on in the war. This included France, Russia, and Great Britain. And Great Britain had really become a huge ally of the United States in the middle of the 1800s. We had gotten over our earlier conflicts in which we obtained freedom and independence from them, and we've become friends again. And then you also have the Triple Alliance, which is also known as the Central Powers. So this includes Germany, Austria-Hungary, which was one country at that time, and then Italy as well. And this was, Italy was part of this Triple Alliance before the war, and as we'll find out, Italy switched sides during the war. And the Ottoman Empire, who we talked about earlier on in the year, ended up joining that Triple Alliance. Another part of this, the third cause, was imperialism. And we've talked about imperialism a lot over the last month or two, but imperialism ended up causing a lot of competition between nations for resources and wealth. And so as these countries are splitting up Africa and Asia for their own gains, they start to have fights over disputed colonies, and this raised the levels of tension and created a lot of bad blood between different countries who are fighting for these resources to become the most powerful nations in the world. Lastly, we have nationalism. And nationalism, as we've talked about in the past, this is an extreme loyalty to one's nation. And even though nationalism was a cause of imperialism, strong feelings of nationalism also gave countries a feeling of superiority over other countries in Europe. And as you might, be aware if you have siblings, if one sibling thinks that they're superior to you, that may cause some bad blood between you. And this could cause, fighting, between these different sides. And so this attempt to compete with each other to, again, prove superiority would also lead to conflict. And so, in addition to a rise in nationalism for countries that were already established, like Great Britain, France, Germany, Italy, you also have other territories within Europe that also want to become their own countries, that also want to establish their own governments, their own states, in accordance with the nation that they feel like they're with. And so for Eastern Europe, Slavic people, which are an ethnic group of the region, like Czechoslovakia, right? So that's who we're talking about here. Southeastern Europe to the northeast of Italy, to the east of of Germany and Poland. These were all peoples that wanted to unite into one independent Slavic nation state. But most of this territory was controlled by Austria-Hungary, which was a power at the time. And so this is going to become a point that is going to lead to this spark that we're going to talk about now. So the actual spark that started it all, with all of these different causes brewing in the background, was that the Archduke of Austria-Hungary was assassinated on June 28th, 1914. And so as the Archduke was driving through Sarajevo, which is in Bosnia, he was shot by a terrorist named Gavrilo Princip. And Gavrilo Princip was a 24-year-old Serbian man who was mad at the Austrian-Hungarians for not giving Slavic people and Serbian peoples the independence that they desired to create one government or nation state. And Princip was a member of what was called the Black Hand, and this is a terrorist organization that was aiming to unite Serbian people under this banner and under this nationalist system. And so in response for the death of one of their leaders, Austria-Hungary ended up declaring war on Serbia. Serbia and those territories were already in an alliance with Russia. And so Russia declared war on Austria-Hungary. So we now have 3 countries at war with each other. Well, Germany is already in an alliance with Austria-Hungary, as well as Italy is in this alliance in addition to that. And so both of those declare war on Russia and Serbia. And so this is the official start of World War I, because it starts to get these other countries involved, and more and more all of Europe is about to be at war. So the last point that I just want to mention before we move on is that we'll see throughout the war that Germany ends up becoming the scapegoat and those that are blamed for the war turning into World War I as we know it. And so even though the war starts with this Serbian man named Gavrilo Princip killing the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, Germany became blamed for the war, for several reasons. For one, Germany was probably more responsible than any other country for militarizing and building this strong army and navy before the war, and causing other countries to build up in response. Germany had also convinced Austria-Hungary to declare war on Serbia for their own selfish gains. They wanted more territory in Eastern Europe. They knew that if Serbia was brought into the war or was declared war upon, that Russia would then declare war on Austria-Hungary, and Germany could then have better reasons to go ahead and invade some lands that they wanted near Russia. And then also, Germany ends up bringing in France and then Great Britain into the war by invading Belgium, who was France was sort of protecting in a way and was allied with. And so for all of these reasons, we start to gain the context of what is causing this first Great World War and why, Germany in the end becomes the scapegoat. No spoilers as of yet, though. Okay. All right. So hopefully with that, we have a greater sense of knowing about the causes of World War I. If you have any questions, please let me know. And other than that, I hope you all have a great day.